Hello. In this video, I'm going to be going over how to add a React app to an existing multi-page website that is using a bundler and was set up with Vite. So I'm going to be using a project from a previous video. So you can check that video in the description if you haven't seen how to get to this point. But what we have here is a basic multi-page vanilla JavaScript site. So I can go and use npm run dev, and that error is something I think I caused at some point, but it goes away when you rerun the dev server. And so when you go to this site, we just have a home page, an about page, a clock demo, and then another kind of empty demo page. And we have relative links and everything working. So this is set up to deploy on GitHub Pages so that I can go to the GitHub repo, which is, I can do npm repo in this project and pull that up. And I have the pages site linked there, and it works just as well when it's deployed out to the web. So what we're going to do now is make our demo 2 page, or we could add another one, but we'll make our demo 2 page a React app. And so generally the way that React apps work, and also the way that Vite, the tool used to create this, Vite, the way it creates a site is it creates a single index.html file, and then whether that's a Vue or a React or Svelte or whatever the different framework may be, generally Vite will render everything beginning from a JavaScript file attached to that index.html. And so you'll have a single page app out of which everything will run. And so if you want multiple different actual HTML files, you need to specifically configure the bundler to serve those different individual sites under this one app folder, and make sure that when that gets built out, it's actually built out into separate HTML files rather than a single HTML file that's modified with a bunch of JavaScript. So now what we're going to do is essentially make that single page type app like normally Vite would create if we were to do like a Vite or an npm create Vite at latest, and we were to choose say React and then choose JavaScript, which I won't do, it would create an app like this, except it would be a single page app and it would render a React app out of that index. So we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to do that with one of our sub pages of our multi-page app. So I'm going to go to demo 2 code, which is right here. And what I'm going to do is essentially take the entire main content of the page. So I'm going to leave the header, which has my nice navigation. I'll leave that in the standard HTML format. And then I will leave the footer as well, which just says created by Nicholas. This might be like a copyright section or a contact us section on a corporate website. And I'm going to just make the main content right here be my React app. So you can actually render a React app out of any HTML component that you like. It's typical to make it kind of the entirety where anything that is visible on the page essentially is a part of the React app, but that's not required. So what I'm going to do is just look up the React docs for React adding to an existing project, and they have docs on this. So you can read through all the details of these docs, but the big thing we need to do here is install React and React DOM to our app. And so this is great that we have an actual bundled app rather than just a standard HTML file with static JavaScript files or CSS files coming in. If we just had that and no bundler, we wouldn't be able to easily install packages from npm because they couldn't actually be bundled for deployment. So now that we have this, we can easily install these two packages, and we'll see in package.json those are added to our dependencies. I think we could probably technically put these under dev dependencies because we are going to build out the site, but I'm not actually positive about that. So there's probably a reason that they're not deb dependencies. And like Vite, for example, is just used to kind of run the app. It's not actually needed for the functionality of the app, whereas React and React DOM are. So next thing that we need to do is create a React root. So I'm just going to see what happens if we follow these instructions from the React docs, which tell us to create an index.html file or main.js or whatever, or sorry, index.js or main.js, whatever we might call it, and then link this into our HTML. So this should be familiar to you. You should have some familiarity with React and how React components and props and all those things work, but how do you actually get this into your app? So you will go to the HTML file where you want to get this React app, and here, since I have on my page, I have a test button. I'm just going to get rid of that test button because I don't need it anymore, and I'm going to get rid of the script that worked with that button, and I can also get rid of all the other content really in main, and I'm just going to leave the main empty. So now instead of this test script, I'm just going to pull in a React root script. So I can call that anything I want, index.js or main.js. I'm just going to name it informatively for myself as React root.js. And I'm going to make sure that that pulls in /React root.js type module. And that way I can import using module syntax like React is going to give us. So we'll copy this code they have here for us. So they're going to pull create root from React DOM. They're going to clear the existing HTML content inside of body. I don't like that because I want my header and such to stay. And then we're going to render React component instead. I want to render the React component, except do I want to document.create get element by ID app? No, I do not. I want to actually get element by the query selector, so I will query selector and get the main tag, since there's only one of those on my HTML page, and this will be the root inside of which the entire React app is created, and then it will render this hello world. So let's go ahead and npm run dev, and we're going to see an error. And when we go to demo2 page, we're going to see an error. Failed to parse the source because the contents contains invalid JS syntax. Make sure you're using the JSX or TSX extension. So since right now we are actually trying to, this is a JavaScript file, and we're trying to put JSX. This is JSX. It also looks like HTML, but it's also valid JSX. What it is not is valid JavaScript. So React told us to do an index.js file because they're expecting our bundler can handle this. Well, it turns out our bundler cannot handle this. So if we were to stumble upon this error and not know what it meant, how could we debug that? Well, let's see. We see some red in the terminal, and we can look at that error and see it says, failed to parse source for all of this. And so let's just copy that error and Google it. Now I know what this error means, but let's see what Stack Overflow has to say. So you read through a couple answers, and this person has some answer about something Webpack. I'm not using Webpack. I had the same error, so they changed the file extension to JSX, so that's a good solution. This person's also mentioning for Vite they had to pull in a plugin. Now I'm not using Vue, but it's good to note that there's a plugin needed. So let's go ahead and rename this to JSX and see if it works. So we come over here and seeing failed to load JS, so we need to change this in here to JSX to match, and then we reload. and we're still not seeing anything. We can look in the console and see what's going on. It says React is not defined, but we have React installed, right? So what's the issue here? Maybe we Google this error. And we see we need Babel, which is like a transpiler. We're installing this. So just somehow it's having an issue in React DOM with using React. And so if you Googled around for a while, you would probably figure out it had something to do with that suggestion about Vue, which is that for Vite you need a special plugin. And there's actually comments here about Vite. If your app doesn't have an existing setup for JavaScript modules set up with Vite. And so you could even test this if you had scaffolded your own Vite app. Like, for example, we could do that right here, npm create Vite at latest, and choose, we'll end up deleting this, so say to delete, and we'll do React and JavaScript. And we see that the to delete project looks like this project, and in the config for Vite we see it's importing a plugin and it's running that plugin in the defined config for Vite, and we do not have that here because we originally were starting with a vanilla app. So you'll also see in their package.json they have that package installed for the Vite plugin React somewhere. And so how can we solve that problem? Let's Google Vite plugin React, and we'll click on the npm package. Has probably lots of downloads, millions of downloads, so seems legit. They tell us we can install it with npm I, so we'll copy that command over here and install that. See what happened to our package.json, and we got that plugin React. And the other things in there, they also have ESLint for linting. We won't worry about that for now. But we can see that they suggest that config that we saw before. So obviously we can't just replace our config because we have important things going on in our config, but we can drop in that config and take the pieces that we need. So we'll get rid of that define config again, and we will get rid of our define config export, and we'll just pull in these plugins and hit save to format it nicely. So now let's see if we can run dev. Let's see, getting that weird error that I had before. I might need to just rmrf my node modules and reinstall npm I. And let's see if this fixes my issue with join. No, I think I accidentally uninstalled join by accident, the node system-wide module. I'm not sure why that happened. I'm going to delete package lock and remove node modules one more time. I need package, but I don't need package lock. That's like the file that manages the order of installation of the whole history of package installations. So it's npm I, and well, no, it didn't fix it. Maybe it's a global npm install -g path. I'm not sure if that was the issue or not, but just trying to get rid of that error at some point. Yeah, maybe that fixed it. So go here and click on our demo. And okay, we got some new dependencies optimized, and when we reloaded, we got hello world. So something is finally working. This is good, no errors anymore. So we had a couple steps that we needed to do. We needed to pull in the index. We had to use a little bit of critical thinking to see that even though the official React docs told us index.js, we actually needed React root, or whatever the file is called, JSX for Vite. And you would have seen that if you looked at your to-delete project. You'll see that their main.jsx that goes directly into their index is named by JSX, not JS. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that to-delete project that we used to just check out how to set this up. And now we can see that we have a good React site on this particular demo page. So it'd be a good time to do a little bit of housekeeping in terms of all of this. But first, let's just run it and indicate that this is a hello from React, and this should not be a h1 because we already have an h1 on our page. So this should be an h2 actually. This is our h1, our title for the page. So hello from React. I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to say get status. We have our package lock and our Vite config, our HTML file. We have a new file. So let's git add dot git commit dash m getting React working on demo to page, and we'll now get status. We should have nothing, and we can run build and preview. So npm run build. Everything went fine. This also says outdir is not inside the project root and will not be emptied. Let's see if we can fix that problem so that it empties it's because the project root is source and docs is outside the project root. So let's see if we can ask AI about this. So it's looking at the vconfig.js, so it should be able to look at that file. How could I change the config file to empty? Modify it to include empty outdir in the build. So that might work. We don't, AI could be wrong, but let's see if it works. It should probably get rid of our error or our warning that we saw when we build. Seems good. So if I were to, we could test that also. Say, create a new file, hi, remove me, and we do that again. We should see that build deletes. Yep, it deleted it, and we're all good. So fix that. Usually if there's an error, there's some way that you can fix it. So now we just want to npm run preview to see if when we go to our 4173 as opposed to 5173 server now, if everything looks fine and the crossing our fingers for the React app working, hello from React. So that seems to be fine. We can even check the terminal for errors. Don't see any errors when we're going anywhere, so that's good news. No 404s as far as I know. So now it's a good time to push our published site changes. I'm happy with those being published, so we'll do git add dot, hopefully status. Hopefully that only affected things within docs. Also did the Vite config, so let's git reset the Vite config so we can put that in a separate commit, and we'll do git commit dash m publish first React app. Git status. Okay, we'll git add that Vite config, git commit dash m changing setting to remove build folder even though outside root. So let's go ahead and git push so we can get those changes published. And we'll just keep working. We don't need to check that out for now. We can check back later to make sure it worked. So everything should be fine because it worked in our our preview, but it's always good to double check. So now we can start doing some React, which is cool. We have things pretty organized. Unfortunately, it would be nice if we could have a markup folder here, but Vite is kind of going to complain about where our root is, and if we're going to start importing JavaScript and CSS in our HTML files, it's going to want all of those things to be inside of our root. So if we made our root something like source/markup, then that might only contain the HTML, and then it wouldn't want us to go above that folder level of markup and then get our JavaScript and CSS from other places in the source folder. That's just kind of how Vite works. There might be a workaround, but as far as I know, this is the best we can do. Have a source folder. It would really be better if we could have something like pages or markup, because it would show that these folders are structure of our pages, like about and demos, whereas scripts and styles, those aren't like URL paths on our site. Those are just kind of organizational things for us as developers. But nonetheless, this is what we're dealing with. So I'm going to create a new folder called components. And this is the typical name that React developers will give their folder where they keep their different React components that they use. Now, because I have this problem where I'm mixing up folders for the structure of the site and then folders for organizational purposes, I'm going to make this just a little more specific, because you can really call these whatever you want. So I'm going to call these React components, and then in that folder I'll start making different files for React components and different subfolders and such. So I'm going to start with a new file, and I'm going to create something to render inside of here that's not an H2. So what I want to do is just make a basic app that kind of shows off what you can do with React. And so I'm going to run the dev server. We can just keep the dev server running while we make changes. That's one of the perks of using something like Vite, is it will do these things in real time. If we make some changes, it'll update it. And I'm just gonna make a graphical burger. So I'm gonna make a burger made of React components, and that way I can put the burger ingredients into state, and I can play around a little bit with mapping and different features of React that are just kind of the simple stuff to reinforce those concepts that you may have learned outside of the context of an actual project. So I'm going to go ahead and make a component called burger, and so to do that I'll create a new file called burger with a capital G or capital B, and then in here I will have to make sure I export either a named export like export burger, or I'll have to export default burger, and then burger will have to be something. So burger can be a functional component, which is really what React recommends. If you look up React class component, you will find official React documentation, and you will immediately see pitfall. We recommend defining components as functions instead of classes, and then they say see how to migrate. So they show you how to make a functional component, and they show you some different things about how you can change your class components over to function components. But it's good to have a little bit of familiarity with both, especially if you're not too familiar with JavaScript classes. Class components can help you learn a little bit of the quirks of that aspect of JavaScript, and that way you're also not super caught off guard if you enter a project from, say, 7 years ago and they used all class components. You still may need to maintain a class component, and you can't expect to just rewrite every project or refactor every project, because that's going to take way more development time than just simply making some changes to some existing class components. So I'll maybe use a little bit of class and a little bit of function, but in the future you should try to transition over to function components now that you hopefully know a little bit about class components. So we'll make this burger to begin with a class component. So we'll need to import actually I'm just going to ask Copilot, make a burger class React component that simply returns a fragment with the text burger and does the constructor to call super. So I'll accept this just so I can see it and delete things I don't like. Yeah, I like everything that they did here, except I don't typically import React. I just import the things from React that I want to use. But this is fine. So burger is going to extend react.component or component because we destructured this from all of React. And then render is doing exactly what I want. It has a fragment, so this means that burger will go directly into whatever the parent component of burger is, which in this case is just the React root. So it should go directly into main with just the text of burger going directly into main. This gives the advantage that I can put multiple things in here, like another div inside of this, and these can be on the same level and they'll go directly into main. So we can go over and check that out and see. If we go into our root, we don't see anything, and the reason is because we haven't actually placed that there. So if we go to demo2 and index, no, not index, the React root, we can import burger, which is a default export, so there's no curly braces, and we can do this relative thing of dot dot slash dot dot slash React components slash burger. So this will work fine. Another way to do this path would be relative to source. This is something specific to Vite, is that because it gives you this root of source, it kind of lets you do absolute paths the way you would in a browser relative to the base URL. It sort of lets you do that, but relative to your source directory in your source code. So we could actually also import burger from and then do slash source slash React components burger, and that would work as well. And if we moved this import to another file, it would work the same way. Oh, sorry, not slash source, but just slash React components burger. And so there we go, but we actually have to use it. So if a React component were a function, you might be tempted to call burger like this. This will cause you a big headache. Don't do this. So no matter whether it's a class component or a function component, I really suggest just use the JSX syntax. So this is a component, and then this is some JSX that actually employs that component. It's kind of like the difference between having a function and then calling that function. But because it's React, we want to do it in this particular, JSX type way. So we have burger and more burger, and if we inspect element, we can look at burger and more burger and see that those are directly in main. And so whereas if we had put a div around those, we wouldn't be directly inside main. That's why we used that React fragment. And if we were to get rid of this fragment, we would have an error because the React component can only have one thing as its return value. So we could do a div or a burger, but we couldn't do both unless we wrap it in a fragment. So it's just a little kind of tip for if you want to have multiple side-by-side return values without creating more nesting, because it gets really a mess when you start having all that nesting. So what we'll do now is actually try to make some burger components. So how can we do this? Let's first take a look at our CSS box model and see what we're dealing with here. So we have our header, we have our main content, and we have a div that's kind of just creating some padding here, some spacing. It's probably a little bit of a hacky way to do this. And then we have the footer down at the bottom so that it automatically takes the full vertical height. But then if the content were to get too big, you would have scrolling, which is how people sort of expect things to work. And what we realize is that if we hover over main is not currently growing any bigger than the size it takes up. So we can obviously set our own height and width on these things. Like we could give this div a style and say style in the React way of passing styles, where we would say like height, 1 inch or 5 centimeters, and then background color of red. And then if we got rid of our content, then, without this height, even though it's red, there's no height to it, so we can't see it without some content. So the content drags the height out, but if we wanted to specifically set the height, we would do that. We do see it's filling the full width, and that's good. That's probably because we have a flex column going on for our body, and so everything is getting kind of stretched out left and right, which is good. So we could do different things with that, but if we tried to do like 50% height, we wouldn't really get a good result there because there's not a specific set height on the parent. It's being laid out using Flexbox, and so that's why we're going to have to continue to use Flex if we want to continue to be able to grow and fill up that space. So let's figure out how we can do that. So it's always good to be able to kind of give yourself some visibility into what you're editing. Just blindly changing CSS properties and crossing your fingers, that's not really a recipe for success. So let's go ahead and look at main and see that main is in here. We're talking about this main. And so when we change main, we see that we had before, let's go to our burger and get rid of our 5 centimeter height and just make it that height. So our main, we can give a background color if we want, just so that we can see what's going on here. And we could even put that in our site-wide CSS to as long as we clean up after it after. So look for main. I don't see it in there, so I'm going to do main. We'll just do background color. Let's do black. And so we don't see it. Why don't we see it? Probably because it's only the size of the red stuff and it's behind the red stuff, so we can't actually see the black color. So let's make sure that main is going to flex grow to 1, and so now we see that it's growing, but it's not growing all the way down. Why is that? Because we also have another thing flex growing at 1, and so the 1 says I want my compared to all the other people's or all the other children at this level who are flex growing, I want to be a 1 relative to them. So if we're both doing 1, we're splitting the space in half. If main were to do 2, then it would get 2/3 of the space and the div would get 1/3. So the response is we essentially just need to remove this flex growing div right here so that main can take up all that space. And now we see it's growing down, but its child, the div that is the burger thing, is not growing down. So how can we solve that? Well, you might think, well, can't we just do a height 100%? But we saw from before how flex and percentages don't always work well together. So let's try to do a height 100%. And it's not going to do anything. So that's because this is dynamically growing to fill up all the available space. If it were to get big, it would let us scroll because we're not setting the height exactly. We're just kind of letting it lay out responsively. So it's a nice experience here. If we were to go really small, we'd get that scroll bar, but it's not going to let us use percentages, and so it might be deceiving to you, but flex displays are going to make things a lot easier in the long run if you can get them down. So main is a flex child. That's why we're putting flex grow. Its parent, which was body, is actually having this display of flex and flex direction of column. So let's also take those as well for this. Or we could create a CSS class like dot flex call and do this, and then just add that CSS class to our main. And we're using class here, not class name, because this is HTML, not React, not JSX, sorry. So, and we have to use that quote format as well. So we'll say the class is going to be flex call. All right, so now we see that we're having all this space. We have flex grow of 2. It can be 1 because there's no one else to share this with, so it's a 1-to-1 ratio instead of a 2-to-2 ratio. It means nothing. We can go now to our burger and see that it has a background color, a red, and it has this text inside of it. Why are we not seeing it? Well, can we look in the box model and see what happened here? Oh, there it is. So I just hit save there and we got it back. I don't know what happened. But everything is working fine there. And now, because this is a flex column, by default, flex boxes are flex rows. So this would kind of orient itself left to right. But because of flex column, it's going to orient itself top to bottom. And so that means when we flex grow, hopefully flex grow, that we will fill up all the available space. And so now I'm just going to clean up after that CSS so that we don't see that black anywhere we don't want to. And I will come back here and get rid of this red color. So now we know if we needed a sanity check, we could put that on, but we know that we're taking up all this space with this box. And maybe a cleaner way to do that would be to give it like a white border or something. And pull off that, and we can see we're outlined in there. And maybe we want a little bit of padding for whatever goes in here. So let's throw on some padding, 1 rem, and I always mix these up, but rem doesn't stand for relative m, it stands for root m. So the one I always like to use is root m, which is the font size for the entire site, root m, not relative m. And then m would just be the font size of wherever you are right now. So this div, whatever its parent or its parent's parent or whatever their font size was, it's going to inherit that. But this essentially, the history of this is something like they wanted to say what's the height of an M. And an M character, like an M letter. An M is going to be about a certain number of pixels high, and so that's not actually true anymore with all the different font sizes, but it was kind of a fun historical fact that an M is about the size of about the height of the letters. So you can think of visually, you want to have about the size of your text, your font size, your default font size, which is what's happening right here. Then that's going to be about the spacing you get when you use a rem as a unit of measurement. And that way, if the user increases their font size on their browser, it'll also increase those. That may not be what you want. That could be a downside, or it could be an upside. So what we'll do here now is try to put some actual burger contents in here. So we might want to put ingredients down here, like another div. So think of, we're going to have kind of like a div for the top bun, div for the burger, and then div for the bottom bun. Let's do that to start. So we're not going to see anything because we don't have anything in here. So it's confusing how divs can be, or like any HTML element can be empty, and you put it in the code but you don't see it, and that's because it doesn't have any size. So just because it's there in code doesn't mean it's there visually. So we're going to take out these letters, and what can we do? Well, we can give those, obviously we can give those static sizes, but I want this burger to be responsive. I want it to be to turn into a super wide burger and a super tall burger and just kind of fill up the available space. So we'll need CSS for that. And I could put it in my site-wide CSS, but as I start to do very specific things to this demo, it makes more sense to pull in CSS that is specific to this burger component. And React will actually support CSS that is imported directly. So you could create a file called like burger.css, and then you could just write some CSS here. Like let's say we want to do like .inch size inch square, and this will be width an inch, height an inch, background color burgundy, and border white, border solid white 1 pixel. And then we can literally just import CSS into JSX very nicely, and then it'll apply like this. So say I put class name, because this is JSX, of inch size, inch square. Now I'm going to get that, and so I can make all my divs like this. And this would work, but obviously as I zoom in and out, those will get scaled. But as does my rem measurement, you see the padding here is relative to the font size, so I like the way that scales. But if I were to make my page really wide or really tall, it's not gonna show anything different here. So that's not really what I'm looking for. I want something responsive. But also I want to point something else to you out, which is how CSS will apply across your project. So let's say your index.html, you have maybe even have other React roots in here, and they're rendered out of this root. If this is all you're doing here, you may not care about this problem. But let's say you go and you throw on your footer, you happen to use this same class name. Now you wouldn't use this same class name, but you notice that style is getting applied. And so there's actually a way around this where we can pull in unique class names using something called CSS modules. And so it can feel a little bit cumbersome at first, but you don't have this problem, because if you were to use a really generic name, like you want to just use the class box or something like that, and you go to use that, and then it starts changing styles all over your app. You might want box to mean one thing in one React app, or one React component, and not mean it somewhere else in your app. And when your app starts to get really large, you end up with these confusing CSS bugs. So the solution to this is, rather than doing a burger CSS, you can rename this to a burger module CSS. Now the catch here is, normally in CSS you could do things like ID selectors, like the ID burger, or you could do like the all div components, or all divs and mains and Ps, or something like that. As far as I know, modules only work with classes, so everything in your module CSS should be a CSS class. But I could be wrong about that. So we're going to rename this, rather than burger, to burger.module.css. And then when we import that, rather than just importing the entire CSS file, we're going to import it as a JavaScript object. So we'll import styles, which is a default export from burger.css. And we could call this anything we want. We call it styles. Another thing people will use sometimes is SX for short for styles. So you could say SX equals this, and then when you go to use that style, it's going to be like, it's still going to turn into a string ultimately because it's a class name, but when you go in here, you can do something like, you need the brackets for JavaScript, and then you can use like a JavaScript template string where you can put $ curly braces and then print out variables in there. So we can do like sx.inch square. And we need burger.module.css. We can get that with retyping this as // Yeah, there we go. And now we're getting that styling put on this div. And the nice thing about this is that now, if we were to use that same class name and say our index, we would not have this collision. And the reason for that is that it's actually creating a unique name for the CSS class under the hood. And so if you were to look at the box model, click on one of these, you would see the class is underscore inch square underscore nd1 up underscore 1. And so it's that unique name, even though to us we get to see it nicely as sx.inch square. So this is a nice way to keep your CSS really close to your JSX and apply styles with whatever really simple names that you want. Like even if you want to call this A. A is so generic that you wouldn't want to use that and expect it to be consistent across your whole app, because somebody else might use that super simple name. So it allows you to create nice and simple names that only have to not conflict within the same module. So let's see if we can create some module CSS for a top bun. So we want to do top bun. Let's just do bun first. So .bun is going to be a class where anything with that class should have kind of like a yellowish brown color to it. And I want that to be more like this color, like a Krabby Patty in SpongeBob. Maybe a little more brownish. And then for the top bun, we want it to be nice and rounded. So I'll do .top. And I'll say should have a extreme top border radius. Except I want to just put this all in one line, so I'll do border radius, and it'll be something like top left, top left, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right maybe is the format for that. I'll have to test it. So now we can pull in our styles like sx dot whatever. We can also, since this is an object, we have to obey our own contract of whatever classes we created in this module. But since I know what modules I created, I can actually deconstruct that object by saying const and then whatever the names are that are in there equals sx, and I can assign those names globally in this file to be that. So I can say like, let's say bun sx. It's not really any shorter, but I could do something like this and then go use the bun sx, or do top sx. Except the problem is these are named bun and top here, so I can this is not actually a name in there, so I'm gonna have to use the actual name, which is bun, and then colon to reassign it to the name bun sx, and we'll do top sx top, and let's test it. So I'll pull, I could either do sx.top, sx.bun, or or I could do bun sx. And then to add multiple, I just put a space between them like a normal CSS class is, and then do top sx. But you're not seeing anything, so what's the reason for that? Well, it has no size. So if I put something in there, should see, oh, are we on the right page? Yep, we got an error, top sx is not defined. Oop, wrong order, so top is inside of the sx object, and we're going to rename it to top sx. Okay, there we go. So we get that. If I pull this out, I have nothing. So I have no width until I add something to it, and then it spreads out all the way. So how could I solve this problem? Well, let's see if we can add a 100% width on the bun, for example. And then if we remove that text, do we get 100% width? Seems like we do not. So Gonna have to debug that issue. If we look at the box model, we see that the main is that full width, and if we look at the item in it, we have the burger, and then that obviously has no width, so maybe we need to, so it's stretching out to be the full width. Let's go ahead and we have lots of nested flex boxes going on here. Let's go ahead and make our div a flex column. So if we check our site-wide CSS, we see we have a flex column class, so we can just go ahead and add that class directly onto our div as well, using class name equals flex col. And so now it's a flex column, and that makes all of these children flex items. And so if we want to make flex items stretch out, let's check the flexbox playground, how that would go. So we're going to add a couple items, make it a column, and then we want those items to justify means to the top because it's a flex column, and to the bottom, and align means to the left and to the right because it's a column. So if we do align items stretch, that's going to go left to right, and if we go justify content center, it'll bring it down to the center. Let's see if we can do that. I'll comment those out so we can see what happens when we put them in, one change at a time. So stretch is not working, and center is working. So if we had some size to this, it's going to already stretch without us asking it. So this does nothing. So we don't need that. But we do need to have some initial size. So what can we do to make that happen? First, let's see if we can use center. Okay, so that does something useful here. But we might just need these to have some width. What if we do width? We already have this filling up the space, but just giving 100% width on this and then 100% width on that doesn't do anything. So we don't need that, and we might just need this div to have some initial size, or we might need the flex basis to be 0. So let's see if we look up the CSS flex property. Flex is short for flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis, and the default values are 0, 0, 1, and auto. So the flex basis is going to be auto. We might need the flex basis to be 0 so that it splits the available space. That could be the solution. Okay, so that did something. That gave us flex grow. Yeah, so flex or flex grow 1, because those both set flex grow to 1, allowed us to fill up the available space. So that probably is because it gave it some vertical height, and so once it had some vertical height, then it had some size, so then it could spread out left to right to fill up the space. So just a little bit of debugging to get it working. That's why we don't do CSS blind. We would end up with 6 different CSS properties that were doing nothing and or conflicting with each other. So now we have a relatively simple thing that's gonna do what we want. So we have our justify content center not really doing anything now because this is taking up the entire space. But if we were to do something like make it smaller, then we might see that that was useful. Like, for example, if we go here and make max height of 1 inch, we see that now it's in the center, whereas if we take off this, it would be to the top. So just something to keep in mind. Keep things commented out that we don't want. And we see a nice round top bun. You can go ahead and change that color to be something better. Maybe it's a little pale, make it a little more golden brown. And this is okay. I really probably want a bun to be more like, kind of almost like a half circle. So, see, make this look like a half circle. I guess that might be too extreme. What else we could do except limit the height, max height of it. But I don't really want to do that, so I'm just going to let it be a weird responsive burger so that we can play around with the flexbox a little bit. We could make this border radius a bit more extreme, I suppose. We could also make this not in percentage, but rather in like font sizes. So we could do like 10 rems and 10 rems. Looks a little weird. Let's try like 20 rems. Looks a little more burger bun top like, although it does scale down so that when it gets really short it kind of becomes more like a sub sandwich. But I'm fine with that look so far. I like the way that scales fine. It does get a bit weird when it's tall, so let's see what happens when we add other components in here to this. So we have bun SX and top SX, and then let's go ahead and create another one, but for the bottom. And we don't want it to look like that, so let's remove the top SX so we don't get that curvature. And we're not going to see anything because it's pushed right up against this. So why don't we create an outline class, and we'll just do we could do a border. I'm going to do an outline which goes outside of the border even, of 2 pixels solid black. And you don't see it over here. Why? Well, it hasn't been applied to anything. So we don't really need to do this destructuring. That was just to show you that method. So I'll do sx dot bun and sx dot top, and then sx dot bun and sx dot outline. I'm going to add to both of those. So we have another space between the class names, and it'll be outline. And remember, these curly braces and $ signs are just so that we can put a JavaScript string into this larger string. It's just an easier way to do string concatenation. And we need sx dot outline. There we go. And we have this going in, except we don't want it to be a top. But everything looks good now. We have very clearly defined edges to these, which is good. Maybe we should make a little space between them. Right now we're not having an issue with left to right space, but we are having an issue with the vertical space. So we don't want that to be within the div that it's creating this, like within its content. We want it to be on the outside of it. So we're going to use a margin for that. So maybe we can just make like a general kind of ingredient. We can just say ingr because we're not worried about class name collisions. So we'll say ingr, and we can do a padding block. So padding block means top and bottom, like it's like the vertical padding, or sorry, not padding, but margin. padding would be the inside space. We want a margin around the outside, and we want it to just be top and bottom, so block. And we can say like try 1 or maybe half a rem, except half a rem, not half an m. And we haven't applied it to anything, so we'll need to throw on the sx dot ingr. And while we're at it, why don't we just say every ingredient can have an outline. So we'll get rid of the outline class and just make it an ingredient instead. Seems simpler. Alright, pretty good, except a little too much space, so let's go 25M. See how we can just make these incremental changes, see the change, be happy with it, zoom in and out a little, see how things do or don't get weird when we change the screen size. Oh no. And kind of make the 5173, and we make, different sizes on our own screen. We can test out with different screen sizes that aren't on our own device. Like we could do like an iPhone SE, see how it looks on there with using the touch. We could do like a iPhone 12 Pro, see how it looks on there, change the orientation of the device, see how things change. So it's good to do those tests, especially once you're all done and you think things are perfect. Usually there's some improvements you can do regarding responsiveness and how things look on different devices. So I'm happy with my responsive burger at the moment, but it has nothing in it. So also, I don't really love the ratio between these two things. So they're both flex growing to 1, and I don't really want them to both flex grow to 1. So I think I would rather throw an inline style on here with the specific flex ratio that I want. So what do I mean by that? Well, we can just literally say style like this was HTML, and say do an object inside of here, flex. This is an advantage of React, is we can do objects here with CSS rather than having to do a string. We could do flex grow 1 for one of those divs, and then we could do flex grow 2 for the other one, and then that one's twice as big as that one, but we want it the other way around. So let's do 1 and 2 like that. That's a little more reasonable, maybe more like 1 and 4. And again, the actual numbers don't matter, it's the ratio between the numbers that matters. So that seems a little more sane for a burger top to a burger bun ratio. So I don't need this flex grow anymore, that's not really useful anymore. And we can go and add a burger patty. So let's say .meat, and say background. Let's make this a bit more reddish. Pull in that CSS class for this, so we'll do copy our top bun, except we'll pull off bun and top. We won't make it top, and we'll make it meat instead of that. Okay, looks good, except we're size 4. Let's do a size 1 to make it the same size as the bottom bun. Probably it would be more like 1 and then 2, or like 2 and then 3, and then this one might be 6. And that might give us kind of the ratios that we're looking, a 2 to 3 to 6 ratio for burger, bottom, top. And then we could throw on, I'm going to hit Alt-Z so that these long lines wrap around to the next line. Eventually the formatter should catch up with me and put them on a new line for me. So this is decent. I don't know if we need this border around. This was just kind of for me to see where the edges of this were. So we'll go ahead and take those off, but leave it around in case I want it later. And this looks pretty good, although, whoa, that is weird. When we shrink down, we get to a point where it's just black lines. So we should probably set a min height on this entire burger so that when it gets shrunk down, it can't get any smaller than maybe like that, whatever that is, something around there. So I'll go ahead and throw min height of like 5 centimeters. It's a perfectly valid measurement unit. And as I get really small, I'm not having that problem that it's shrinking down to just being borders. It's shrinking down, but then it gets to its minimum size, and it just gives me a scroll bar. So if someone had a really small device like this, I would want them to still see the burger. They might have to scroll, unfortunately. It's not ideal, but it's better than having just borders. So we could also set a max height, like maybe if we're on a really tall screen, we don't necessarily want a burger with the proportions like this. You know, we could set like a max height of like maybe like 10 centimeters. And so then no matter, once it hits that maximum height, it's just not going to get any bigger. And it's going to be at the top because we don't have that align, whatever that align items on our flex box we deleted, I think. So we can do like align content center. Oh no, it was justify content. Maybe we do need our border again. Oh. So yeah, the entire box is being limited in size, not the contents of the box. So we would actually need to figure that out with this one's parent. So we could either put justify content center on the parent, or we could actually hopefully just do justify self center on this one. And of course it doesn't work. So don't like to leave CSS properties that do nothing, so maybe we should figure out why that's not doing anything. Right click, inspect, box model. So we just selected main, and then this div that's main, that's the div, that's main, that's the div. Yeah, so the main should be a flex column. It should be able to justify content. So I thought I should be able to justify self on the flex item, but let's see if the flex column, we could just put that as our default. I don't want that as a default, so we'll do style. Here it has to be a string. So we'll do flex. Oh no, justify items center. Justify content. There we go. Justify content center. So that seemed to be our issue here. Now if we look at the box model and we select main, we should see that top and bottom. It should be evenly from the top and bottom where that purple is, so that's fine. Not sure why justify self. I always get confused with content versus items. So that's why it's good to make sure that you can test and see that your CSS is doing what you think it is and not just putting blind CSS. I'm going to hit Control B to get rid of the sidebar. I can bring it back, but I just want more space to show code in big font here. So now could we do, let's create some cheese. That's very yellow. Be a little more on the orange side here. Pull in that class. I'll put cheese right on top of the burger, and I'll make that flex grow 1 and cheese. So it's still an ingredient. It's still putting those classes on them to get reuse those other styling elements. It's a little thick. I think we want to go, I want to keep 1 as my basis. I could probably go 0.5 here and it would work, but I like to start at 1, so I'll do 1 for, what now? 6, just double everything, 12. That's pretty good. The gaps are getting a bit big for my taste, so maybe I'll do like 0.15 rem here for the gaps. That's a little too small. We'll do 0.2. And 1 pixel borders instead, just really tiny border. How would white look? Weird, weird. Alright, so then now we have cheese. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 elements. Let's try to get to 7. We'll throw on some lettuce. Probably put lettuce above lettuce and tomato. So there's no color to those yet, that's fine. Go throw on that tomato. Just do background color red on that. No, that's a little harsh actually. More like a pale red. And then lettuce, green. That is not a very cartoon burger green. Maybe it is, I don't know. I like that one better. Alright, and everything is very uniform in thickness. I think the tomato should be a little bit thicker. So let's do tomato as a 2. And let's do lettuce as like a point. Nah, I want to stay at 1, I think. So let's see how this looks. Get a little smaller. The gaps start to look a bit odd now that things shrink down. That's fine. I think that looks reasonable. Maybe it should be like, can we do a percentage of the parent? What if we did the gaps being 1%? Percent of what is the question? I don't think that's doing what I want. Let's do 0.15. And then maybe we should have like a min height on any ingredient. It will mess up the scaling, but it'll prevent anything from getting really, really small. Like we probably wouldn't want it to get smaller. Probably want the height, min height. Probably want the height to get any smaller than like maybe 0.3, twice the gap. So even if we shrink down, our scaling will get messed up, but it won't get too small. Make sure that's working. If we put like 5 rem, yeah, it's working. We'll say like 0.45 rem. That way it doesn't get, yeah, that's a little better. So change the size. It gets really wide, which is weird, but I'm just gonna pretend this is a feature and not a bug. I could prevent that obviously with a max width, but that could mess things up also if it gets taller or shorter. So there's always kind of a knock-on effect of whatever you're gonna do with your min and max heights of things. So this is looking good. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Guess how we could get a 7th? We could put pickles on here, but we could also just put another piece of cheese. Let's do pickles because that's harder. So what if we want to do like a pickle where it's like kind of a rectangle and then like a gap and then a rectangle and then a gap and then a rectangle? So we're gonna have to have more divs inside of there. Have to have one div with other divs. So this would be a great opportunity. I know our code is kind of hard to see, but it looks better zoomed out. I just want you to be able to see the letters. this would be a good point to make another component. Now, what we have here is a lot of repetition, and so already, first of all, these divs are not very readable. We don't really know what div means unless we read these class names really carefully, and you know, we could easily prevent some of this code duplication by creating a component for the ingredients themselves. But let's go ahead and just first make our pickles component. So here I'm going to use a functional component because that is the preferred way to make React components anyway at this point. So we'll call it function pickles, and I could have another function for pickle inside of there, but I like things to be as far, like I could do function pickle, but I like things to be to the far left as possible. And so as long as there's nothing that I need to access inside of this scope that's inside of the pickle scope, I'm going to pull pickle out and have it be kind of modular. So this is a single pickle and then multiple pickles. So for the pickles, all I want to have is kind of like pickle, pickle, pickle with a gap between them. And so I could use a flex row for this, and I could do space between or gap or something to have the gap. So let's go ahead and just make the pickle something really dumb, like a square box of a couple pixels in size. So we'll just have this return. This is like the render function in the class component. So we'll just return a div, and that div is going to have background color as style of, you know what, let's just go ahead and make the class for it. I was gonna inline styles, but we're gonna make a class in the end anyway, so let's just do it. It's gonna have the ingredient class, I know that, so go ahead and put that on here. I know it's gonna flex grow to fill up the left to right space because we're now not working with a flex column top to bottom, but a flex row left to right. So we'll do flex grow of 1 for these pickles. They're all going to have 1-to-1 ratio with each other, and then we'll make this an ingredient, and we'll also make it a pickle. And so the pickle can be dot pickle why is it gray? That's such a bad choice, Copilot. I want it like a pale green, I guess. So let's do, we have pickle, we have ingredient. We're not using this anywhere. And we want like turn. We could just do 3 like that. It's going to do 3, but I'm going to be clever and do map it to make 3 individual. So we'll do pickles will be a div, which is going to have, yep, it's going to be class name flex row would work, except we don't have that class in our site-wide CSS, but that could be a useful utility class in other places, so I'll do that. Dot flex row. Yeah, and flex direction row is actually the default value for flex, so I don't even need that. So we'll do it, it's a flex row, and yep, it's array.map3, so it's creating an array of 3 items. We don't care what's in it because we're gonna underscore, meaning we don't care what that value is. You're gonna do an array of 3 items with who cares what in it, map that to React components. So we're gonna make 3 pickles because we're ignoring this value and we just want to know the index and give it a key so that React can keep track of these 3 items in there. And then we need to actually use our pickles somewhere. Let's put our pickles like on top. Let's put them on the right above the bottom button. So here now we can just use a much more nice to read pickles. And because it's a function component, it's a function, so even though it's declared after we use it, this is fine because the entire file scope knows about pickles. So normally things that you use in code have to be defined above, but functions can actually be defined below, so that's fine. And we're getting pretty good. I thought we were going to have to solve a width problem, but we don't have to solve a width problem, which is great. In terms of our gap between things, our padding is vertically happening, so or our margin is vertically happening, but not horizontally. We don't want to add horizontal padding to all the ingredients. I'm fine with the vertical margin being there, but I do want a little bit of a gap between those two things. So I can just go ahead and add a, let's see, we can add a pickles style or individual pickle. Let's do a pickles. And so I want to have here, because this pickles is going to have flex on it, I'm going to say gap. So gap says, hopefully we'll say, put a space between all the flex items of this particular size, even though they're going to grow to fill up the available space. So we'll throw on style equal, no, class name equals, we do want flex row, so we'll do the flex row, which is coming from, so yeah, we can't do a string like that because this is not valid HTML or JavaScript until we put it, it's valid JavaScript, so it needs to be inside curly braces. So a string wouldn't have had that problem. We could just do a string like this, but if we use that template string, those tick marks, that is a JavaScript thing, so we need to have this, and we can do flex row for that and put a space, and then just insert our variable name for sx.pickles. And that's not a null element. So is there a gap? I can't even tell if that's working. Let's say 1 rem. Yeah, okay, it is working. So it just wasn't big enough. And that looks really pretty nice. Although, you know what? I would prefer if there was some outside spacing as well, if they were kind of a little on the interior. So we could make pickles have a padding inline, so left to right of the same size. Yeah, that'll work. Looks a little odd to me, to be honest, but I think that's fine. So we'll do that. And yeah, there's actually nothing, we're not using any of the properties of functions, so I can also show you how you could use an arrow function in this case. So we could say const pickles equals no arguments mapping to the result of this, and because we don't do anything except return a value, the shorthand for this is we can just remove the return statement and just wrap the entire thing in parentheses. So it's just going to take no arguments and turn it into JSX. That's the story here. Pickles is a function that's an arrow function named with the name pickles and takes no arguments and creates this JSX. And then pickle could be the same thing. We could even shorten this by making this const pickle is an arrow function that doesn't need a return because it doesn't do anything except return, and like that, a little bit cleaner. So now let's go ahead and make these ingredients more modular. So we're not, for one thing, we're not naming these, so it's not really apparent what's going on. And then they're all doing very similar things, so we could easily abstract this out to a component. So let's just make a generic ingredient component. We'll start with a function, or we can do an arrow function, but we'll give it a body. So rather than just having parentheses, a single return value with no other actions, we're going to do some other actions just in case we want to do other things, and then we'll need a return value. So we can return a div. We'll just do the null element or the self-closing tag because it's cleaner, and then it'll call ingredient. Really, it's a, well, it could be, I guess it could be any ingredient. And so that's going to take props. This is like the props that come in from the render function. Call this anything you want. You could call it properties or A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It doesn't matter. You just have to be consistent with the naming. And then I'm going to assume that the props that come in, we're going to have the ratio of how big I want it to be relative to the other parts of the ingredient. So I'll have it take a const ratio equals props. So destructuring ratio, this is the same thing as saying const ratio equals props.ratio. It's just a shorthand for this, and then we can do this with many names inside of that destructuring. So we'll say ratio, size ratio, let's call it. And we'll use Copilot to create a JS doc for ingredient. Except I'll exit this and highlight this so it knows what I mean. See if it can do it. Yep, so it's just changing that. That's what I want, except, so this is going to give us, even though this isn't TypeScript, so normally in TypeScript we could say props is an object that contains these certain types of values, and you can't do that in JavaScript, one of the downsides of JavaScript, but you can use JSDoc to help you with this so that when you hover over ingredient, then you can get those things when you go to use ingredient, like say you call ingredient, then you know what that you're doing, like for example size ratio is going to give you this IntelliSense to say the size ratio of the ingredient, and that's coming from the JS doc in this certain format. And you can Google JS doc or use Copilot to help you with that as well. So you get that size ratio, and so I'm going to pop that into a style for flex grow that kind of dynamically comes in based on that ratio. So I couldn't just put that in the CSS because CSS isn't the dynamic the way that JavaScript is. So I'll just say we're going to make a const style equals, and I'll pass just an object with flex grow of not 4, but whatever that size ratio is. So I could actually do something clever here and rename size ratio to flex grow, and then that's essentially like saying const flex grow equals props dot size ratio. It's like the same thing as this, except we can do it for multiple of those. So then I don't even need to say flex grow, I can just say flex grow because it's implied that it already has the name flex grow in this current scope. And then we can do const child props, so the props we're going to pass to the children, and we can do something clever here where we can pack these all up into an object, and we're actually going to pull class name right from the caller, whoever passes us some class name. Then we're just going to pass class name as well as a prop. So we could put these like class name equals class name. You can do this, but this is so annoying because it's already named in our current scope. So we can just do child props, and then we can do something clever where we pass all of those in that way, like style and class name and whatever else we add to the props. We can just simply do that with a spread operator and then the child props. So this is a lot of JavaScript tricks I'm showing you, but these are all valid JavaScript techniques. It has nothing to do even with React. This part is React in that we're passing in JavaScript as like attributes of this div. It's their properties, their props, they're not attributes. So that's special. But this spread is actually a JavaScript thing, and it just says take this object. It's kind of like take this object and throw off the brackets, whether they're curly braces or whether they're square brackets. It says throw off those brackets and just give me all the pieces. And so then if you imagine this being with no brackets, it's just all the contents of this. So it's saying style name is style, or style is style, class name is class name, and that's exactly what we want. So it's a nice shorthand for that. It keeps our div down here really, really clean. And see how everything's really close to the left as well? It makes it very easy to read the code top to bottom and understand what's going on. and we've added a new prop, so we should document that as well. And I like that documentation. The class name of the ingredient. I mean, it's whatever. It could be better. So I'm liking how this is coming along. I'm passing a class name and a style of this to all those, and anything else weird I do? Not really. So let's just go try. Let's swap out one of these things at a time. Just one. So we're gonna pull away that top bun and reload our page. Uh-oh. Do we have some kind of error in here? Sys is not defined. Oh, I tried to call this ingredient. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so I just pulled that top bun off and everything slid up and according to its ratios of size. So it looks a little non-burger-like, but relatively close. So now we can go up here, and if I, in the render function, throw a new ingredient with a size ratio of 12, not 6. 12 was what we had. Class name is bun and top and ingredient. You know what? I want to make this cleaner where I can literally just pass the class names as an array. That would be even better. So let's go ahead and not have this take class name, but it's going to take classes. So name I made up. And I'm going to say class name here is going to be equal to classes.join, join that array, and join it with a space so that I get a string of classes separated by a space as the class name. And then props.classes is not going to be, that's not a string anymore, that's actually an array of string, which is the classes to apply to the ingredient, correct. So I will, instead of passing a class name like this, I'll pass a classes equals, and then pass that JavaScript array of those classes. And I'm missing a class. I need SX. I'll do it in that order. So it's an ingredient. It's a top bun ingredient. I like the way that reads. SX.top bun ingredient. It's a top bun ingredient. So see how much cleaner this ingredient is now, and it actually makes sense what this is. It's an ingredient with size 12 that has the classes top bun and ingredient. So now we can do the same thing for our others. Let's just do them one at a time. So I'll comment it out so Copilot can see that, and it's going to fill in. Yep, that's what I want. So now I'll delete that. And I'll comment this one out, and then Copilot should be good at telling me about that. Good. And then comment this one out. Same deal. What did I do wrong? Something went wrong there. Comment this one out. There we go. Delete. Comment out. Meat, and finally bottom bun. Nope, not cheese. Bottom bun. Not really, Copilot. I wanted 6 bottom bun ingredient. Did I want 6? What was it? I guess it was 6. It's a thick bun. Okay, pretty good. Pretty decent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See, the pickles are a little weird, but everything else actually seems to kind of be straightforward in terms of this data model. Like everything has a size ratio, and then it has these. So this is also a really good point where data could come in from a database or from somewhere that we saved a recipe in our app, and then we could come back up with this burger visualization, or we could, you know, change things around where maybe there are more ingredients or different ones. So why don't we try to take these ingredients and use map to print them, like render them in this way, but use a data object instead. So we're just going to pretend our data came from somewhere. If we want to emphasize that, we could even create another file. Like we could create in source, we could just create a new folder called data, and then we could create a new file called say burger.json. And let's give Copilot some context. So we'll say Copilot in burger.json, I'm going to say think about file burger.jsx and give me some ingredients that follow the ratios and classes in there. But let's just say follow the ratios and give the data some names. Alright, I like this pretty much. Let's go ahead and edit our current file with this. Throw that in there. Top bun, size ratio 12, so on and so forth. Except I asked for not, I think I asked for not these classes, because those classes are going to be coming from our module CSS, so they're not really, it's not really possible to embed those in JSON. Those will have to be looked up at a later date. So I'm gonna give these a different, I'm gonna give them like an ID as well, so there's like a nice name to read, but then there's also going to be an ID property of like top bun. I'm just trusting that these size ratios are right. They really might not be. And I don't want pickles in here because those are weird. And bottom bun is fine. Alright, so let's now take this JSON data, and Vite is nice and will let us import JSON, so use Vite to import JSON from /data/burger.json. I think just a default import works perfectly like this. I'm not positive, but burger, since this is like a global constant, I'll make it all caps, burger data. And let's see what happens if we just, I know our pickles are going to be missing, but let's just see if we get rid of everything and we map burger, we need curly braces, burger data.map, and then we need a render function that's going to take that ingredient data, so this, something that looks like this, and render that out. So we'll need to create either a render function or another React component. So I'm gonna go with a render function. So const, well, we could put it low, I guess. Say const render one ingredient, comma index. could name these whatever we want. There's the parameters from map are gonna come in this order: the object, and then the index of that object, and there are more that you can select also. And from that, we're going to just return some JSX ingredient where the key. Let's go ahead and also give that ingredient an ID. Do we have it? No, we have name, ID. Let's go ahead and just pass those as well. Ingredient dot ID, or we could even be clever here and go, well, no, because we're not returning, so unless we do curly braces in a return, we can't put more code above this JSX. So we'll just stick with that. But we need to now add an ID and a name. We may not use them in our ingredient, but we should at least document them and pull them in. So we'll do ID, name, and we'll document those as ID, say the string ID, the human readable name, and we can do an underscore name and underscore ID to indicate that we're not really interested in using these. Or we could do like ID colon underscore name colon. I don't know if we can use underscore name again, but we could do like underscore underscore dunder. That might work. And then we want the size ratio to come in, and we can use the ID as a key. That's a clever idea in the render function. This is not valid right now, so I'm just going to say render one ingredient and close that out and go back to the render function. So we pass the index. We don't need the index to be the key because we actually have, so we can get rid of this parameter and we'll just do ingredient.id as the key as well for that. So okay, we're getting those basic things happening. Somehow they got the classes that they need. Oh, it's passing in the classes. Yeah, and we're actually going to need to do some kind of class lookup for this. So in here, because we have in the way we've done this with the module CSS, we don't know what's the relationship between our classes and then also our names. So we actually could put that, if we know, since we know the classes are in our module, as long as we use the right names, we could be okay. So why don't we say like classes? Maybe what they had was actually a good idea from the beginning. So we'll do classes of, we'll do top and bun, and they're all going to have an ingredient class. So we're getting some good ideas from the AI actually. So this one will be just lettuce. Tomato will be and we have some duplication in our data because we're always naming the class. No, this one's called top bun and has classes top bun, so we need to specify these carefully. Classes cheese, classes meat. Okay, come back to our data. Pull out render one ingredient is going to take those classes. Yep, so it's going to take classes ingredient. No, we need to do something like we need to get all of ingredients classes need selected out of SX, then also ingr. Alright, so it has an idea for us. Classes equals objects.keys SX, so key value pairs of those, filter by key, whether ingredient key is in there. Well, yeah, we know they're going to be in there, but sure, that's a nice safety check. Map key to the value. Concat, yep, concat this to the end of that array. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now classes are going to come through to ingredient, and ingredient is going to take classes.join. Why is that not working though? Each child in a list should have a unique key property. I thought we did have that. No, it's not ingredient key, it's ingredient.classes. This is wrong. So we need to say for all the key value pairs. No, this is wrong. So we need ingredients that classes dot map from the class, map it to the SX of the C property inside of the SX module, the module CSS, and then concat at the end the ingredient. That's what we want. Ingredients is not defined at 44. Ingredient singular. There we go. Magic. No pickles. So that's fine. Pretty good overall. Now we're mapping to create our entire burger from the data, and then if we were to change the data, like we threw in an extra lettuce below the tomato, we're going to get that reflected right there. So it's pretty cool. Only thing that would be cool also is if we could somehow insert at the index to say, we could use a higher order function. This is going to be pretty complex JavaScript. We say use a higher order function to insert pickles component second to last in the sequence of JSX elements created by the map. It's a bit like burger data dot reduce. Yep, that's what I was expecting to see. Yep, pretty close, except we're not getting our bottom bun. So we need return accumulator. So it's saying if the index that we're at is array.length -1, then throw in the pickles. And we also want to throw in whatever is at the end. Yep, there we go. So you just have to trust me on this reduce function. You can look up the documentation if you want on do MDN prototype reduce. It's a pretty powerful higher order function that you can use in JavaScript. So now we can get rid of this. We've inserted our pickles. So our React component basically takes our burger data and then hard codes in some pickles right before the bun. So sneaky insertion of the pickles component. And let's make sure this is all documented well. So we have props.id, props.name. There's a key getting passed in as well, but I think the key is mainly for React to keep track of us. Double check that if we look at one of these, that it does in fact have a key. Yeah, I guess React might get rid of that. Wait, this is HTML, not React. Let's see if we inspect element. See if we console log. Are we getting errors here? Child should have 13. I think the children do have keys, do they not? Render one ingredient, takes this, key. Oh, maybe they're not unique because we added multiple ones with the same name. Top bun, lettuce, tomato, cheese, meat, bottom. Oh, this one doesn't have an ID. That should hopefully fix our error there. Yeah, okay. So they did all have keys, it's just one was missing. And let's see if we just double check that before we return this. I'm going to just do a little hack here. Console.log. We're not here, but yeah, I mean, I know the key is working because React isn't complaining. It would complain if there was no key here. Yeah, so there's a key. Alright, so that's being created dynamically, but we are still having this data just coming in from the JSON. We're not actually putting it into the state of the component. So how can we put it into the state of the component? Well, we're going to need some state. So this dot state equals, needs to be an object. It can't be an array, which this is JSON, but it's an array. So we're going to need to do, let's say, burger data. So this is the initial burger data. We'll just say initial state. Could do something like const initial state equals burger data, and then pass this dot state equals initial state. And then what if we want to make something that can modify these burger elements? So we could just make it like, oh, if you click on the burger, then it removes it. It's not very accessible. If someone were using this with the screen reader, we would want that to be an actual button. It's not very good practice to make something just a div that's clickable. So we can go ahead and add a button into each one of our ingredients, which is super easy to do. We don't have to change that code in a bunch of places because it's React. And we could just simply change our ingredient one time and everything else changes. So let's do that now. What we're doing with our ID and name. And if we wanted to, like, we could even make this not self-closing and give a label to these because we passed the data through as props. So we have that option now. What's happening? We have ID and then name. We'll make the div have an ID for HTML purposes. That's nice if we have ID here. So we'll add that to the child props ID. And we'll remove that underscore. And then we'll pull name. And name can go right here. There we go. So now they each have a name, but it's getting kind of weird because this is like has a border radius. So that content is going up there. We could make sure that that gets pushed down, but I don't really care to have that in there anyway. It was just kind of for show. So let's go ahead and do a button. Say remove. I guess we could put that name. Remove whatever the thing is. Remove top button. Remove bottom button. But let's put that in the button. Remove top button. And to make sure that that goes down there, let's put it in the. Let's give it a class name itself. Let's do class name equals curly braces, backticks, $, sx.remove button, and then in our module CSS we can add a dot remove. I just like remove. I don't really want remove button. So we'll do padding. The order is going to be like, if we did 1 rem, 1 rem, 1 rem, 1 rem, that would be the same as just saying 1 rem once, because it's going to, not padding, sorry, margin. And then we need to actually add that correct class of sx.remove is the class name. And so this is going to be, I think it's top left, bottom right. What does it say? Shorthand. Yeah, the order, I always forget the order, but it's like, I think it's like top left, bottom right. So 2, yeah, so top, that was top, 2, that might have been 5. Yeah, that might have been top right. Maybe it's top right, bottom, top right, left, bottom. I don't know. It's kind of weird. This one was just left, clearly. Top, right. I don't know. There is an order for it. Not answering my question. Escape. Okay, highlight. I'm going to highlight this and say, what order do these sides go in? No. I want, what order do margin shorthand go in? Margin top, right, bottom, left. Okay, I should have just asked that question clearly from the beginning. Top, right, bottom, left. So I want, or you can also do just like, what if it is just 2 of them? Then it's top, bottom, left, right. So we'll do top, bottom, 0, left, right, 0.5 rem. Let's do 2 rem. Let's do 5 rem, 0.5 rem, and then let's do 1.5 rem. Alright, that's pretty good. We could also do our handy flex row trick. So we could throw on each ingredient can be a flex row, and then we can use a line and justify to put it at the end and the bottom or something like that. So let's see about doing that. We would throw onto ingredient. We can throw on the style of not just flex grow now, but we can also put on no, we need to add some class names. So class name is classes.join, and then we'll do classes.concat.join. So we'll be adding something before we join those together. So we'll add the class of flex row, which was on our site-wide CSS. And then we can also add, I think we can pass multiple things here. Like we could do, now it's a flex row, so we can justify content or items. Oh, no, that's, sorry, mixing things up. That is CSS. So we'll throw that into style of justify content flex end. So that'll go all the way to the right, except accounting for the margin, because we want enough margin to get out of the way of that border radius on the top bun. So maybe like a 4 rem, maybe like a 3 rem, 5 rem, no, 1 rem, 2 rem, 3 rem, not 32. And top and bottom 0.5. Do we need even 0.5? I don't know if we even need anything. Let's do 0 rem. And then I don't like that spreading out at all, so we'll do align items center. Yeah, align items. So that's going to throw it in the center. I don't like how big the text is in these buttons because it's going to restrict the shrinking of my ingredients. So I also don't like the colors there, so I'm going to style my button a little bit. Notice the way I set things up, it's really easy to just add these styles or add new classes here, and this keeps this from being messy. So in terms of the button itself, we have the class name remove, so we can add onto the remove button. Can we even do like button.remove? Yeah, I guess it does work. So I don't know if the CSS selector is actually going to be working on this, like if I were to put remove on something else, but I can specify that it's a button with the remove on it. So let's do font size small, font color, so color black. And I don't know what the background I'm going to be on, so I want to make sure I have a good contrast for black. So I'll do like white with a little bit of a see-through. So white partly see-through. And that would be an RGBA. The A stands for alpha value, so it's going to be like the opacity of that, and I'll put the opacity up to like 0.75. So it's showing a little of that color through, and then it ruins the nice button styles that are default. So border 1 pixel solid black, that seems cool, and a little border radius of 0.2 rem. Let's just do a couple pixels, like 5 pixels or 4 pixels. You see, just little changes, you get much nicer styling. And let's make sure we don't run into any of our border radiuses, radii. Pretty good. I think I'd honestly like this maybe like in the center more, but just get rid of this. Do we even need this margin? Can we just, oh, we do need the margin. Definitely need that left margin. And then in terms of the centering, I don't want it really to be centered, so let's do let's change that flex the center to be flex end. So that'll go to the bottom, and then we should probably put just a little margin on here of like 1 rem maybe, just to push it up no, like, no, not even like 0.2 rem, 0.3 rem, 0.2 rem, just to like push it up from the bottom of the ingredient a little bit. Now it's really far over from the right, and we're not running into that problem, so we could probably do a much smaller number here, like 1 or 0.5. Yeah, so now the bottom right of each ingredient, except for the pickles, we can't remove those. So every no matter what's left, the pickles will be there. I guess we'll run into the problem. We might run into a problem when we run out of ingredients. The pickles reduce function might get ruined, and the pickles might get deleted or something like that. But obviously these buttons don't do anything. We can click them. Maybe we should make like a button active style. I don't know if we can do that in our module CSS. We do button.remove hover red. Does that work? Yeah, it works. Okay, that's cool. Button.remove. Yeah, hover. Let's do hover of pure white, maybe. Or like white. Slightly pinkish white, maybe. Yeah, and then we'll do active button cyan. So when we click the button, it goes cyan. All right. And let's make that a little lighter version of cyan. All right. Now, we just need to make these buttons do something. So to their onClick, we can pass a function name. Do onClick right here. OnClick. Now that we have two props, I already am overwhelmed. I want a const button props with the class name of sxremove and the onClick of something. And then I want to be done with this messiness here, so I'll do spread btn props and class name with a capital N. Click that. Remove top button is going to the console, so that's good. Remove tomato is going to the bottom. Yep, looks good. But I don't want that to do that. So I'm going to say onClick is going to be remove. That'll just be a function name, and that'll come in from props. Remove. I'll document that. Remove is the function to call when the ingredient is removed. To call to remove the ingredient. That's a better description. And then we need to pass that prop in. So what is that prop going to do? Well, render one ingredient is currently an arrow function that is not inside of the class. So we're now running into this issue where if we want to access the this property in our class component to do this.setState, we can't do that because we don't have this. So we can solve that problem by making render one ingredient not an arrow function, because arrow functions, as I understand, cannot be bound to the this property. So like when we type render one ingredient dot bind this, we would get a render one ingredient, the same function except a version of it where this means something inside the function, except we can't do it because it's coming from an anonymous function. So we need to actually name the function, or we need to use an actual function which has the this keyword. So you do render one ingredient function render one ingredient, get rid of the equals and the arrow, and now we have to have curly braces, and we have to return that value of the JSX right here and wrap that in parentheses. Yep, one too many parentheses. So same thing that this is doing, but now we can do this dot something. So the render one ingredient is going to have passed to it a this, and we can have that ingredient do inside the render function. You render one ingredient dot bind this, which is going to be the this of the burger class instance. So now we can use this inside of here, and we'll say we can use an anonymous function here so that it can capture. The problem is if we used another function inside of here, it would have its own this unless we bound it to this. So the nice thing about anonymous functions is they don't have their own this. So they get their this from their enclosing scope, which in this case is a function which can have a this, and the this came from binding it in class components. You already see how class components and this and instances is a pain, and it's one of the reasons function components are easier. So we will do remove equals this dot set state. We'll do prev state, and I'm already overwhelmed with an arrow function as an argument, so I'm going to name that arrow function as const mutate state equals prev state arrow const burger, which is what we called the state up when we did initial state burger. Say pull out burger and then say burger.filter ingredient where the IDs match, and return burger new burger. Shorter way to do this would be just say burger here, destructure it there, and this will just return burger colon burger.filter. So we don't need the return statement, we don't need curly braces. Just go ahead and do this like this, just curly braces for the object. And that needs parentheses as well. And there you go. Remove is now a function that takes the state mutator, which will take the previous state, and it will pull out that burger component or that burger property, filter the ingredients to where the ID is not equal to that ingredient that we're trying to pull out, and then it will return that as an object with the key burger, which was the original key, and we'll set state using this mutator function. And so that remove function is now the remove prop we're going to pass to the ingredient. And since we have this nice space where we can do extra things up here, we can even do const child props, or since this isn't a component, this is a renderer function, we can do just props since we haven't used that name yet. And we'll do remove, and we'll do, I guess we could just pass in the entire ingredient. That's a kind of a good point it's making, but how could we do that? We would have to make a lot of changes to ingredient. Do I really want to make those changes? Yeah, I guess so. I think it's worth it. Let's do it. So we don't need name, we don't need ID, we don't need, oh, we do need key. We need key for React. We need that. We need size ratio. So now we can simply pass ingredient. We'll fix this in a minute with the props. The key is going to have to be there for React to keep track of the items when they're mapped, and then this can come down to in here, classes, const classes, and instead of pulling these three out and the size ratio, we'll pull ingredient out of the props instead, and then we can destructure the ingredient, and size ratios in there. We're going to name it flex grow. So we're destructuring the ingredient out of props, and then we're destructuring the parts of that out of the ingredient, and then we're making the classes up, and everything should function as expected. So we can now get rid of a bunch of these things. We can get rid of, yeah, I don't even know if the key, like if I console.log props.key, does it even come through? I'm not sure. It might just be captured by React. Yeah, it's undefined. So we don't need to worry about key or name now, or ID, or classes, or size ratio. So props is the properties object, props.ingredient is the ingredient object. I guess we could do props.ingredient.id.name.size. So we're just specifying that these are all of those things that are going to come through, since we don't have TypeScript to give us this, so that when we hover, we get a really nice understanding of what these types are going to be of those things coming in. So now we don't need that. We don't need that. And we, even better, we can throw our key here. Const key equals ingredient. And we can destructure, be clever here, destructure ID and rename it to key. And then we can just pass key. Now our props are remove, ingredient, and key, and we need to spread those props right here. And it was more work, but look how clean that code is. So let's see, what does remove do anything? Nope, still doesn't do anything. So why is that? We're passing the remove function. We're getting some errors there. Key prop is being spread into JSX. Keys must be passed directly without spread. Oh man, so I tried to be too clever. So I'll pull this out of here and just put key right here. Alright, so the state mutator is working. If I console log this, do I get the class component, or is it undefined? Yep, I'm getting the burger, so that's good. This dot state, this dot set state is a function. Mutate state is a thing. Only problem is I'm not actually basing my mapping on the state. I'm still mapping it on the hard-coded burger data. So let's transition that to do this dot state dot burger dot map. This is one long function call. This dot state dot burger dot map dot reduce, and that is how it gets all of these React components. And now, we click remove and things get removed. Now what happens when we get down to the pickles? Do the pickles go away too? Yes, they do. So why is that? Well, this reducer is placing the pickles in based on finding the last element. So it's looking for the bun, and when it looks for the bun, or whatever the last element is, whether that's the bun or not, it's going to put the pickles right before that. So if you take your bottom bun off, hopefully your meat should become your bottom bun now. So we're going to remove the bottom bun, and yep, our meat becomes the bottom bun, and then our cheese becomes the bottom bun, and then our tomato, and so on. And that's the really nice thing about doing this with functions, is that React can figure all this stuff out and rerun these functions to create our UI. And it's so much, I mean, it may not look clean, this may look kind of hard to read, and we could improve this, for example, by putting our reducer up here, and this would help us a little bit. Basically, we want to take this reducer So this is called the accumulator. This is the thing we're building up. And the thing that we're building up, we're passing in to start out as an array, an empty array. And then we're going to call the reducer. It's a little less scary when you write it like this. It's going to call the reducer starting out with this. So it passes in this as the accumulator. And then the cursor, or the current item. So it's moving along one by one, looking at the cursor. And if the index that we're at is the array, the full array, if the full array dot length is the last item, basically, if we're at the last item, then we're going to return what's in the accumulator already, so spreading those items, throwing off the square brackets, and then we're going to put square brackets right back on, but put other stuff next to it. So you put all the accumulated items, all the top stuff, and then throw in our pickles, and then throw in our cursor, which here is the bottom bun, or whatever is at the bottom if we remove the bottom bun, the meat in this case. And then in every other case where we're not at the last item, we're just going to throw in the accumulator and we're going to add on the cursor. So we start at the top bun, then we put that into the accumulator, we get to the green one, we throw the lettuce on top, after the bun, we throw the tomato after the lettuce, we throw the cheese after the tomato, and we throw the meat after the cheese, and then we want to throw the meat after the cheese because we're at this last item, but instead we put the pickles in first and then we put that. So it is a little less scary if you break it down step by step. But now we have this pretty clean code that's using these higher order functions of map and reduce to map or basically translate this array of data items into an array of JSX, which then React can put into our UI as these multiple items. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll just put another, since the data items are not 7 yet, I'll just go ahead and put a 7th cheese 2 in here. And I'll put class cheese Swiss. And then we can put a Swiss cheese class. I don't know if I'm not super familiar with how to do what happens with the conflicting stuff, but we can do like cheese.swiss maybe. Can we do this? And throw our background color to like a lighter, kind of like a yellowish something. Looks like the bun now, but it seems to have worked, which is good. What color is Swiss cheese? I have no idea. It's this color, whatever that is. And then we'll go back to our burger data and rename this to Swiss cheese. And the cool thing is our data will update our components because React is cool and does that stuff. And even if we wanted to make our cheese a little thinner, we could do like a... Did our size ratios get messed up? Maybe. Like a 0.5. I hate to use fractions, but oh, I guess our buttons take up space as well, so that's kind of throwing things off a bit. But it gets super wide and it gets super short until, oops, our button. I don't like our button hitting our corner. That's pretty messy. Gotta be a perfectionist. So our button remove is gonna go 0.75 from the edge just to be safe. And then get really wide. Make it limit the width a little bit on this burger. Let's make a dot burger max width of, let's say, can we do like a responsive, like a medium, medium screen size? I don't think that works. No, that doesn't work. We need like a media query, I think. We could do something like 500 pixels, just as a upper limit. So we'll need like the actual burger. We could make this itself. I mean, this is our component, so it doesn't really make sense to make a component for this. But we can just put flex call comp space burger. Now it shouldn't get too big, hopefully. Nope, wrong. Needs to be this tick marks and then sx.burger is what we want. There we go. Now it doesn't get too big. Only problem is I would love if it were in the center because I'm a perfectionist. So let's get it in the center. We have the box model. It's inside main, and main is a flex column. It's justifying content to center, but it's not aligning center for some reason. So let's check on that. There it is. Why did it get so small though? It's cruel. Oh, because the width of this, that's why. Maybe we should do like a margin auto on the left and right. Maybe that would be better. On the burger, we did like a margin, top and bottom can be 0, and then left and right can be auto. And yeah, it's going to do the same thing because it basically is shrinking us down to as small as we can go. We don't really want that. So I guess we might as well just not have a max width, but a width at that point. So we're not really taking advantage of this. So we could just push ourselves out from the edges by like a certain amount, but then if we get on a small screen, we would prefer to use that space. There must be a way to get that in the center. Oh, we need to stretch it. That's what we need to do. I think. No, align, items, center, stretch. Not what I wanted. Just want to be in the center when it's at its max width. Nah, I think I'd just rather it be responsive, honestly. I guess we could do what we were doing of align content and then do a min width and a max width and let everything else in between get figured out based on responsiveness. So we'll do align items center, and then we'll do we'll make width be, oh, this is probably how we could do it, width max content, which says, oh no, that's only max size of the content inside of there. Say 100%, can we do that? Okay, 100% works. And then max width is 500 pixels. So okay, there we go. When it gets up to that size, now it's going to stop, and otherwise it's going to try to grow to 100%. That's what we wanted. So now it's nicely in the center. It can shrink down and be short. That's fine. It's a little disproportional, but I'm okay with that for the responsiveness. And once it gets down to its min height, it's going to cause a scroll bar. Maybe we should even make the min height on those ingredients. We have those min heights on the ingredients right now. But maybe we should put, where did we also have a min? I think we had a min height in our burger of 5 centimeters. Maybe make that like 10 centimeters. So even on a small screen, it's not going to get, we'll do like 7 centimeters. And now we have duplication of the max height. That's a little weird. Probably throw all this, we are realizing we have all this style here, we can throw all this style on the module CSS. That way we don't have conflicting styles. But we're going to have to change the format, obviously, to be CSS format. Border, max height, just want all this stuff. Let's just do this. I think this will work. If we highlight and Control I / fix. Hopefully it didn't actually modify any of my CSS there. Alright, max width. Let's keep our units consistent here with 10 centimeters. Do 15 centimeters. 12 centimeters. Alright, 12 centimeters. Shrink down. 10 centimeters is fine. Shrink down, don't get smaller than 7 centimeters. Max height, don't get bigger in height than 10 centimeters. And then padding, flex grow, content center, looks good. I don't know if we need this border anymore. And now we just can say a little bit about what this demo does. Maybe we should make a reset button that sets the state back to normal. So just return a React fragment, and we'll put in here the div, and then we can put paragraph. This React based burger is based on a JSON file, and you can remove ingredients, but the pickles always stay second, from the bottom. All right, and then okay, now we'll just say add a button with a label for it that will call reset function on click. On click, this dot set state burger. That's exactly what I wanted actually. Only thing is I wanted a label for it. I guess buttons don't need labels because they have a label inside of them. So I think they're already responsive as is. So if we remove the top button and we reset, okay, great, we get our burger reset. So this React.js burger is based on a JSON file, and you can remove ingredients, but the pickles always stay second from the bottom. Say I did want like a let's see if AI can tell us let's see, is there a semantic HTML way to give instructions for a button? What if I want it readable to the screen also? So ARIA labels are going to be read by the screen reader, but I want them to be also readable by the other users. I feel like we should be able to do a label, but I don't know if it's typically associated with text area select. It might not be correct. You can use a visually hidden span inside the button to provide additional instructions. I don't want it visually hidden. I just want to say something. So I'm just going to say P, use the reset button below to put all the original ingredients back. All right. So maybe I'll put this above. So if someone's using a screen reader, they have the say ARIA. No, it's not going to be live. So that should be fine. Use the screen reader, they have the ARIA label, and then the other readers, they can use the reset button above to put all the original ingredients back. All right, so let's make sure no errors in the console. Move everything, reset. Everything's fine. We can remove everything, and there's no issue with that. And our rest of our site still works fine. It's just one demo, and be a good time to check the cleanliness of our file overall. So we can use the outline in the Explorer to see the structure of our file. We have the burger, we have the render one ingredient, the pickle, and the pickles. I think it would make sense to pull pickle and pickles out and also ingredients. So let's go ahead and make a subfolder called ingredients, and then new folder ingredient, new folder pickles, and in the pickles we can have a new folder pickle. And so I'll show you a couple different ways you can do things. Rather than, if we're just going to have one file for something, it's fine to just have a file. So we could delete this in this case and just create a file called pickle.jsx. I know this seems like a lot of work, but it's going to make it so much cleaner because you can do something that you couldn't do with HTML, which is pull away your pickles into another file. So actually, you know, they're small enough that it's not crazy to have them like in the same file. You would still easily be able to read that, but I'm just going to be super granular. So I will import the SX from / from / burger.module.css. And then in pickles, I'll also create an index.jsx. So this will tell when somebody goes into the pickles folder, it will pull the default exports from index. So index is just going to, in this case, import pickle, which is going to be the default export from here. So export default pickle, and then we will import pickle from /pickle, and we will also import, sorry, it's not a named export, it's a default export. Import pickles from /pickles, which we'll make in a second, and then we'll just export pickles, and we'll export the default export of pickles. So this way someone can do a default export from this entire little folder and get that, but they get also named export and get the pickle or the pickles and make those things reusable. So index is a pretty annoying file name to work in, so that's why I'm not putting it in here, but it's necessary because this is in a folder. So I'll create then that other file we need, which is pickles.jsx. Let's make this bigger for you. And then in pickles, we can put the, where are we? Control P to find burger. We're going to pull pickles out, Control X, and go to pickles, paste. We can make a named export and a default export just to be safe. Export pickle and export pickles. We're going to follow this same format here. Since these are in the same folder, we're good to just do the same exact thing. Import SX from the module CSS, and then we will import pickle from dot, and that will get from the index, hopefully. Const pickles, export, default pickles, export, pickles, named export. Good there. Now we'll go into our ingredient folder, which is going to have our generic ingredient file, and we'll create a new file called index.jsx, and then we'll create a new file as well called ingredient.jsx. And we can follow our same format from pickles, like that. So we'll import ingredient from ingredient. We will export default ingredient. So if this seems silly to you, it's just necessary because we want to be able to import directly from this folder without having to go ingredients/ingredient.jsx. It's just cleaner this way. And then in the ingredients.jsx, we'll pull in our ingredient JSX, which is going to probably, it seems it's a functional component, so it's probably self-contained here. We'll just grab this whole thing, Control X, save that, paste it here, and we will we can just do this all in one line if we make this a function. So we can remove the equal sign and the arrow and do function ingredient, and then we can just do export default function ingredient, and we can then also export ingredient. And now we have all this documentation, so when we're in Burger, we don't see the code anymore, but we can still hover over ingredient once we import it, obviously. Import ingredient from ingredients, and the way we're going to do this is as a named export of the ingredients folder, so we don't have to do that. And to do that, we'll need to put an index in ingredients. You see why this index issue is useful. Index JSX in the ingredients level. So now we can take all of our exports from the pickles and from ingredient, and we can pull all of those and export them. So import pickles from /pickle we'll import ingredient from /ingredient, export ingredient pickle and pickles, and there's going to be no default export for ingredients because there's nothing sensibly that is the most default here. Now we have those, and we have the exports from here. So now we can simply from Burger we can import ingredient from ingredients, and we can also import pickle and pickles. But we only need pickles, so we don't need to bring in everything, just the ones we want. That's how named exports work. You just pick the ones you want. And now our file just got a lot shorter. So now we have a render one ingredient. We have a reducer. This is a completely functional, so we could actually pull this outside of our class scope, I believe. And so I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna name this better. I'm gonna call it pickle insertion reducer, because that's what it does. So we'll throw that into here, pickle insertion reducer. And then we have render one ingredient. That's about as far over as we can go. We're going to need access to this keyword somewhere, this .set state. So we could actually move mutate state to here, to this level, because it doesn't require anything that's in this scope. And so const remove could actually just be, no, it still needs to be an arrow function, but it could return that. There's no reason it couldn't return that. We don't care about the return value of it, so that's pretty clean. And then mutate state could even be out here, but it doesn't really make sense to do that. What is this doing? It's taking a it's taking the ingredient and checking ingredient.id, so it would need the ingredient. We could actually do something crazy like a double arrow function and make something that takes, you know, an ingredient, and we can destructure ID, and then from the ID, that can be the one we use here. And now mutate state is actually a double arrow function. Crazy. But that means when we call it the first time, we get the second arrow function with ID being put in there. So now ID is coming from ingredient here. So we can just say mutate state, but call the first arrow function and pass in ingredient. And then that can be pulled out. And so mutate state says it's really like ingredient remover, it would be the name for it. Ingredient remover for ingredient. That's kind of redundant. We'll just say ingredient remover. Ingredient remover, and it's really get ingredient remover. Get ingredient remover for a particular ingredient, and then this is the remover that is returned by that first arrow function. So get ingredient remover for ingredient. This looks pretty clean. Render one ingredient. And then render one ingredient is called up here. We have a single render function. We have a constructor. Pretty much the only thing that could make this cleaner would be to pull this out to the left scope like this. Should be like render burger, and it would be a function render burger, and then we can do render method equals render burger dot bind this, so that it has access to this. And hopefully with all those changes nothing broke. There's never any promises of that. React Components ingredients ingredient index.js does not provide an export named ingredient. Well, yep, it doesn't. So we'll export SX is not defined in ingredients JSX at 16. That's because we didn't import our SX here. Makes sense. Import SX from // burger.module.css. Maybe we accidentally have some endless loops in here somewhere. Yeah, the page is not responsive, so I might have some endless loops going on somehow with my clever importing. Out of memory, yeah, so I messed something up for sure. Let's import ingredient, comma, pickles from ingredients. So let's go to ingredients. Ingredient, pickles, import ingredient from ingredient, maybe it's this. Maybe this single line thing is a problem. should have changed things more incrementally, clearly, because now I don't know where my bug is. It's very frustrating. I think we're going to run out of memory again. Let's see if we have the issue if we just import everything from the exact files they're supposed to be in. So we can do let's do import ingredient from ingredient/ingredient let's try that. Ingredient from ingredients/ingredient. So that's what I was trying to avoid. And then let's do import pickles from ingredients/pickles. No, it's still an issue. Man. Should have done this more slowly. Got to be something with the importing, I think. So we're not just going to aimlessly change things in the code. We've got to go back to somewhere we know was working, unfortunately. So let's go back. No, not to that. We like all that. Okay, now we're good. Let's try one thing at a time. Let's try to remove the pickle. And we'll try to just pull in pickle from there. Import pickles from /ingredients/pickles. Nope, that's causing an error. So let's move ingredients up to source, move. And then let's move pickles down to React components. And we just need to make sure the things aren't importing too many things from each other. So pickles is going to import pickle from, maybe it was this dot. Oh, I didn't even think if it was this dot. So we can do this. Oh, is it going from here or here? You know, it was probably that, but I'm not going to change it blindly. /pickle, okay. And then this should get pickle and pickles and export default pickles, but export both of them. So now burger can import from /pickles. Say failed to resolve import. So let's just do this from /src/react components /react components burger module CSS. We'll do that absolute path, and then we can put that to pickle and pickles. There we go. So no issues. It might have been just that dot. I was trying to be too smart with that dot maybe. So now we can create the ingredients folder and throw pickles in there. And so now we'll do it as a named export from ingredients. And we have the ingredients index file from there. So we'll copy this into ingredients as an index. And for now, we won't do that one. We'll just do this one. Still, everything is working fine. Now let's see if we can just pull in this entire ingredient here to ingredients, move, and pull that and ingredient. Okay, so now the ingredients folder exports these named exports of pickles, pickle, and ingredient, and then now this is not needed, I think. Move to recycle bin. And in the burger file, we can hopefully now get rid of our ingredient. This could have been the issue, so we never know. Pull in pickles, comma, ingredient. Still working. Okay, good. So that means we can delete this code. Yeah, I did something you should not do, which is edit a bunch of code and then not see what problem I created. I want to make sure the whole thing is working as I'm making these changes. So now let's see if we can make that difference of the reducer, where we pull the reducer out and call this the pickle addition reducer. Throw that into reducer. The puppy really likes React. He's very, very disturbed about the bugs. And we don't need anything. It's a pure function there, so that should be fine. And the last thing we were going to do is pull out the render function so it could be as far to the left line as possible, because that is nice. So we'll call it render burger, and it will be a function so we can bind this. So we'll say render equals render burger dot bind this, and there we go. That render function is working. So we have this tiny little class that calls this function in the function scope of render burger, and render burger is going to call render one ingredient, which is going to render an ingredient from there. So now we can even make this even better by making burger its own folder. and then we can create a new file, index.jsx, and let's just start slow by import burger from /burger, export default burger, export burger, and we'll create a new file called burger.jsx where that's going to come from. The reason I'm creating the burger.jsx and not just putting in the index, which I could do, is that first of all, when I go to this file, I want to see in VS Code that this file is called burger.jsx. Because if I do like Control P to open a file, I have all these index.jsx's. It becomes very hard to know which file I actually want to switch to. So it's much easier if that name actually matches the component. And then the other piece is that you can do multiple exports, like if, for example, like in ingredients, where the index file was pulling in the pickles as well as the the ingredient. It just depends on what your module is going to be doing, how you want to import and export things. So now with the burger, we can take our actual burger.jsx, and so we probably shouldn't, yeah, so we're going to be getting rid of this file anyway, so that's okay. I'm just going to take only essentially the class and the imports and take those over. So I'll throw these in here, and the pickle addition reducer doesn't need to be in here, and we'll keep anything that isn't gray, so anything that we actually need in here we'll keep. Alright, so then we're going to obviously export default burger and export named export burger, and now we're going to need to import our render burger function. So we can import render burger from /render burger, and that'll probably need to be a JSX file. I'm going to have that lowercase letter because I'm not actually considering this a component file. I'm considering it sort of a JSX helper file. So that's why I created a folder, because now I can create a new folder called, this isn't necessarily convention, but this is just something I'm going to choose, called renderers. And then in renderers, I could create an index and then create the files. For now, I'm just going to create a new file called burger.jsx render/burger, and then in that we'll pull our renderer, the function that is not necessarily a component, but it returns JSX to provide that render function. So I'll go here, render burger. This is going to need some stuff, probably, like SX. It's going to need, we can pull that absolute import in from like pickles, for example. Add that, and see it's relative to React components because it's from the root that Vite is handling. So we can do like this. Oh, not that file, sorry, in the burger render. And we're going to bind this somewhere else, so we're not worried about that. So we can just export default function render burger. And so now, because the default export, the name doesn't matter. We can also export render burger there. So we'll close that out, and we will pull this in from /renderers/burger. And it would work as either a default or a named export because we both named it and we did default. So then default, we can change the name of it in here. So now we have that one, and then the burger renderer is going to need render one ingredient. So we'll have to import render one ingredient from /one ingredient. So we'll create a new file, one ingredient.jsx, and we'll put in the render one ingredient function. Who's using the pickle edition reducer? I'll have to figure out who needs that. So I think this is where linting would come into help us getting some pointing out like variables that we have in here that aren't named or something like that. We could probably get that by adding some packages to our project, but for now I'll just keep moving. So we're getting very close. We can just put that in the same file. I think that's reasonable to keep in the same file, so we can check what it does. And then we'll need the CSS in the other renderer. And having an issue here. Render burger is not defined at burger.jsx. But it should be defined. So, what's the issue here? Is this the problem? This is our file, isn't it? We're getting mixed up. We're getting mixed up here. So, burger.jsx is here, and we should rename this to underscore burger.jsx. Index is going to do this. So the React root is going to import burger from React component /burger, which is going to hit the index file, which is failed to resolve import from the index file, which we have. Alright, well, the puppy may have been exaggerating, but we had to check to be sure. So, let's go back, figure this out. React root, importing burger from React components /burger. Is the index.jsx file. Burger has an index.jsx file, as far as I see. Did I misspell burger? Already exists. course, I misspelled. This could happen to you. Ingredient is not defined in burger, which is coming from render burger, which is coming from here, which calls ingredient. So if I had a linter here, let's just go ahead and see if we can add that. Add linting. This is like kind of like spell check for your code. I think this looks decent. I'm just going to go ahead and npm create vt at latest, and then we'll just do another test react. Delete me react JavaScript, and we'll see delete me contains package.json and an ESLint config. So let's copy that ESLint config to. It might have some specific stuff about. Yeah, I think that should work. So we'll try copying that to the root of our project, and then we will copy package.json components, which have all these things here, and to our package.json. We're going to have duplicates, so we'll remove those. Remove the ESLint types. No, that was fine. We just need a comma here. And let's see if we can npm I. Okay, and then can we npm run dev without an error? Issues with that log file with join, but everything seems okay so far. Ingredient is not defined. Let's see if we can see if our linter is going to show us that ingredient issue in. No, that's going to be in render one ingredient. And if we Control-Shift-P, reload the window, Control-Shift-P, type reload the window. See if we get linting. We might need a lint command actually. If we check the package.json, yep, we see lint. It's doing ESLint dot. So let's see if that script is needed for the linting to occur. Thought we would get that automatically in VS Code, but I could be wrong. So we'll just need this command right here. Maybe not. Well, anyway, we have it now. So we could probably run npm run lint. Maybe not, TBD. For now, let's just do npm run dev and fix that issue. So we'll import ingredient from burger. Where's that from? It's from React Components burger. No, it's from React Components ingredients. I think that should just work. Ingredients does not provide a default. We need to make that a named export, a named import. Pickles is not defined, and that makes makes sense. Pickles is not defined at the reducer in burger.jsx. So we will import pickles from, there we go, finally, we're all the way back to normal. I do wish we could have that linting working. React version is not 18, I think it's 19 in here. Need to add all these things, have plugins. Create an ESLint JS. Then add a linting script to package.json. Integrate with VS Code. Install the ESLint extension to get real-time linting feedback. Let's go ahead and install ESLint. So find and fix problems in your JavaScript code. That's what ESLint is going to let us do. Oh, finally! So now we have this working now, where ESLint is telling us our errors, and those red are going to say all the places where you have errors going on. So burger data is, how is that coming in then? That's interesting. I guess it's global data, so somehow it's working. Oh, because the reset button is broken. So ESLint helped us there. So we can pull in our burger data from /data/burger. And I think maybe we need burger.json. What did we have in our original? What did we have in our original renderer? SX is never red, so I guess we don't need that there. Like to see green, don't we? I'll go ahead and delete the delete me project. Helped us get ESLint going here. And now we just need search for this in the project. We have it in underscore. This one's going to get deleted. We have it here. We have it here. Yeah, I guess that was right. Oh, it was resetting. Yeah, it was resetting correctly. It was just, it does nothing when it's already reset. So it's just my fault for not understanding that. So we're seeing all green. Whereas if we were to now create like a spelling error, a syntax error in our code, like this, pickle addition reducer is declared, but its value is never read. So linting is going to help and give us this kind of like spell check going on. And render burger is not defined. So that's what I was trying to get at earlier, but had some issues with it. So we'll look at burger, and I think we should be able to delete underscore burger, because now we're pulling that from the burger folder, which now has nicely nested renderers, and the burger file is just this simple class, and all the files are pretty minimal in size. This one's a little larger, but 40 lines, I mean, nothing crazy. So this is a really huge advantage to React, is that you can organize your code into modules as if it's JavaScript code, and then you're bringing together JavaScript and your markup, and you can even have like scoped CSS, like this module CSS, which probably, now that I think of it, should go in here, and it's going to ruin all of our imports. So we can copy the name, look, where are we trying to import it? React components slash burger slash, and this is a absolute path, so we could use it anywhere we're trying to pull in that CSS. Yeah, so they're just telling us we haven't validated that these props are what they say they are. So something could crash if we didn't use this perfectly. Reload. Everything seems good. All our styles are coming in fine. We can use our other portions. I'm not seeing any errors in the console. Wow, okay, that was tough. Alright, and I probably should have been doing more informative commits as we were making progress. I was just trying to move quickly for the purposes of this. You will also want to do the same. Even still, it's been 3.5 hours. So at this point, though, we definitely should commit our source code and make sure that our project works. So we'll npm run build. We'll npm run preview. Check out our site, home, about, clock demo, demo 2. Remove our burger parts, reset the burger, check the console. Looks good. Remove everything, make sure there's no crash. And there we go. So last thing to probably do is rename this, our HTML, to be a little bit better. So I'll call this React Burger. And so in the index, we're going to have to change our nav and all our index.html files now. So we could just see whatever we're going to change. We're going to change this line, look for this line, and replace it with this line, except it's React Burger and it's demos slash React Burger. Now I'll need to run the dev server to check that it's working, and we know we have still missed something for our build. We need to tell Vite about this because it's not going to work on preview after we build. Couldn't resolve demo 2 for one thing, so this is going to have to be React Burger. And now it works just fine. F12, console looks fine. We can remove stuff, we can reset the burger, clock's still working. Looks good. Oh, but maybe I want React Burger demo to say React Burger demo, and I want it to say React.js Burger demo. So I'll say wherever we have this, change to React.js Burger demo. So we'll build and preview. go straight to preview rather than dev. It's a very small change. Nav seems consistent across all those pages. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not counting the pickles, so that looks good. Get status, get add source, get commit, well, let's see, get status. So we have the ESLint, we have package JSON. Let's do get add dot and then get reset source docs. So let's add everything essentially. Get status, everything except for the docs. And so we're gonna all of these other things. I thought that would work. Whoa, scrolled up too far. Yeah, so ESLint, package JSON, v config.js. We can get, let's get get commit adding linting support, and really actually go back one commit. I think I want to do soft here, but let's see. Oh no, did I just ruin everything? Uh-oh. Can I undo? Don't run commands you don't understand. Ah. It will discard the most recent commit and all changes associated with it. This action is irreversible using standard git commands because it removes, so I'm dumb. To recover it, do ref log. So I want this. Git reset -- hard this git status. Do I have my, the question is, do I have my linting support? Okay, seems like we have it. Git log. Ooh, okay, I think I saved myself. That was a close one. I'll just say uncommit locally and going back to stage. This is what I wanted, soft. I knew I didn't want hard. That's what I wanted. Okay, so now I can get commit. I want to change the commit message. Because this also adding React support and linting. Now git add source, git commit -m, adding a React app to the multi-page app structure. Git add docs, git commit -m, publishing a new React app. Git status, git push, pushes all my commits up, and if we do npm repo, deployment in progress. Let's see if we can check it out. Demo 2 should change to the React Burger. Alright, it says we have it. Not seeing anything. Why is Demo 2 still here? That's a bit weird. Always got to test. What the heck, man? Got messed up. There's no way I destroyed all of this. Ah, man. The React root is here. That's there. React Burger is even here. The heck? What am I looking at right now? Why is it taking me to Demo 2? Always got to test this stuff. I think all the index files. Oh, this one doesn't have it. Why doesn't this one have it? I guess just our nav is messed up. What about the about page? No, it didn't get fixed. Why didn't that get fixed? Oh, how many of these do we have in our app? I'm gonna search the whole folder. We need, I mean, I guess if we look here, we can see if at least on GitHub Pages, did it get published? It just didn't get linked. So if we go to React Burger 404, that's not a good sign. Alright, that one's now hopefully fixed. This one has it. I feel like we're missing our styles now. Like so many random things are missing. I swear that was in the middle of the page before. Yeah, none of our, I feel like none of the styles are, not none of the styles, but it's like our index didn't get saved. Like the changes that we made to main, I guess, somewhere along the line, those got wiped out. So annoying. Oh no, those are here. What the heck? I swear we had a main. We had main. We had so many styles in here that are not in here. We had like main. That is so frustrating. Git stash, and then what was that thing I used? Git reflog. I guess the problem was we only pulled in some of that stuff. Very, very annoying. So let's see if maybe it's simple. Maybe it's just a couple CSS styles. Flex row was one of them. So we're using it, site-wide CSS. Yeah, so flex row. To make sure we can see these changes. We can save it, we can save it. We have most of the burger there, so. What the heck, man? Now all the, I thought I just changed all of the, oh, I stashed it. Git stash pop. close, we're close. Mixing things up now. Dot flex row. Dot flex call. There we go. Don't want that. Whoa, do not want that. That looks more normal. That looks like what I made. I don't recall if the text was in the center like that. I think I had set main. I had done something with main, I thought. Okay, there's flex grow 1. And then main directly contains those P. So I guess I could put, I don't know if those were centered before or not. I guess when I had all the way over to the small size, it wasn't an issue. Yeah, I guess it makes sense for that to be in the center. Say dot info max width fit content, and then in the burger we can, in the render burger we can make a span here, not a span. Let's add this right here, class name sx dot info Isn't this burger supposed to spread out though? It's like so many little things that we did. Yeah, maybe it's just hitting its max width. I guess it's just hitting its max width. That looks fine, as long as everything works. Do not play around with Git commands you don't understand. That's the moral of the story. Let's npm run build npm run preview. No point in pushing it to GitHub until we build it and check it out and make sure it's right. Oop, and we already have a bug of React.js burger demo, so we need to replace React.js burger demo that. Now it's consistent across everywhere. Check our console. No errors. Use our interactive features. No errors. Okay, come on, finally. Git status. Git add dot. Git commit -m. Fixing nav issues and missing CSS. And now we finally have it on our deployed site. Hooray. All of our pages work and they can go to each other from each other. Great. So to review what we've done in this video, covered a lot. It's been about a 4-hour video. The reason is because I wanted to go into super detail for people who are curious about all the little details and all the kind of JavaScript intricacies and the Vite intricacies and React and best practices, like how to organize things. I could have done a much shorter, to the point, how to achieve this basic kind of thing where you use some React in a Vite project. But I hope if you've watched all of this, or if you've watched sections of this, you've seen how there are a lot of little details that come together to make your code easier to manage over time. And so by taking that a little bit of extra time, it only takes a couple of hours to get something like this together. Maybe it might take you, twice as long the first time you do it, or 3 times as long because you don't have the experience that I do. But like, you see that those bugs that you'll encounter are normal. And so the best advice I can give is to just make sure you do things incrementally. Don't make some of the mistakes I've even shown you today, where you make a lot of changes at once and try to be too smart, because sometimes things aren't going to work the way that you expect them to. So just try to do your best to organize your code in a way that's going to make it easier as it continues to grow. You'll see even this has grown quite a bit. There are a lot of files now and a lot of things that have to work together perfectly for everything to come out right on the other side. Use Git to your advantage. Do not execute Git commands like I did that you don't know what they mean, because you could end up losing your code. And the whole point of GitHub is to save your code. So if I had been committing more frequently, I actually could have just gone back to a more recent commit that I knew worked, but I didn't have one except for way before I started any of this process. So it's a good PSA for commit your code often with good commit messages, so that you can do that git log and then just find a commit that you were in a good place when you remember when you made that commit, and you could go back there. So we talked about integrating React project into an HTML file using React DOM. Talked about using the plugin for Vite to get everything bundling correctly. Talked about organizing your code into a React components folder and folders and subfolders of module code that you can then nicely import and export in your JSX code, and avoid messy import export paths, so you can just have something really clean like this, like from React component /burger, and pull in a React component, and then within that covered lots of different things, from class components, function components, how you can take things that have dependence on a particular scope and sort of separate them out into the module scope or the file scope so that you can keep your code as close as possible to the left line and keep your files as close to the top line, meaning as short as possible. You can use CSS modules to use really short and convenient names and not have them conflict in other places of your project. And you can use lots of different features of JavaScript that overlap with the features of JSX to get really nice combinations of both the JavaScript features and then being able to bring in HTML and render things visually using JavaScript. And so the big thing I want to emphasize here at the end is that we can create these modular pieces of code because of the power of React. That's one of the great benefits it gives us. Obviously, there are many features of reactive code, like all of these things of like our UI is based on our state. But we also have this big advantage that now our HTML files don't have to grow to be 300 lines long. We can just create lots of React components and use those components within other components and start to compose a really complex app. Maybe this isn't the most complex app ever, but it definitely wouldn't have been super simple to just write this in an HTML file. So thank you for watching if you have, and I hope that this helps you to integrate React into your project and understand a little bit more about some of the tips and tricks that you can use to be successful when you're programming in React.